Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now if there's any one thing I enjoy in my backyard, it's having a nice fire. Backyard fires and me, well, that's pretty much what I've born this channel on. The ability to process wood, get yourself a nice fire, and just enjoy your time in the outdoors. That is what I enjoy the most. And here today, we have a product that's going to help me do this. So here, this is a 34-inch globe-style fire pit cooking apparatus from the company Ikuby. Now, the people at Ikuby reached out to see if I'd be interested in taking a look at their fire pit. And, well, my backyard's already pretty well set up for the fire making capabilities. But here today, I thought this would be a nice alternative option, something that I could potentially build out a secondary location in my yard, have a nice, safe, contained fire, and the ability to cook. And that's what really caught my attention about this globe fire pit. And so in today's video, I'm going to go through this in detail, show you all of the features, but also a full setup. This did come fully disassembled. If you're interested in this, you do need to set it up. It takes a little bit of work. It's not difficult. It's just a little bit tricky. So I go through all the details with you today. And so when we come back, I go through all the details, the full setup, get myself a fire, and just enjoy this outdoor fire pit. And so with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Ikuby who did provide this for review.
And so now as we get into the Ikuby Globe Style Fire Pit, Ikuby does suggest, if you are going to get into this, to utilize two people for the assembly. Not light, but at the same time, not incredibly heavy. Now, they do say there's glass inside, and not to open this with a knife. There is no glass inside this. I think they just wanted to mark it fragile, and, well, like any good reviewer, I'm going to use my EDC knife to open up my packaging. But as long as you're careful, not a big deal. You'll notice everything inside the box comes very nicely packaged and protected. This is a very nice kit, absolutely beautiful, and overall, it's actually not terribly difficult to put together. I would say it's just a little bit tricky. So if you take your time, and if you have general mechanical skills, you will definitely be able to assemble this. It is not a big deal. It does take a little bit over an hour, and for me, of course, as I was assembling it, I was also filming, so it did take me just a little bit longer, but all in all, not terribly difficult. And as we go through this, I'll do my best to really give you some examples, some tips and tricks, and all the details you need to be able to assemble this if you follow along with the instructions. Again, as I mentioned, it's not terribly difficult. It's just a little bit tricky. So with that, let's get into the assembly of the Ikuby Globe Fire Pit.
Step 1A, with these holes towards the top, these holes towards the top, and the point towards the bottom, these sections are going to get bolted together to become the bottom. The A bolts are the shortest, B bolts are medium, and C bolts are the longest. So notice the proper overlap, all of the pieces of the frame coming together with nice even overlap. Very simple. We just need to make sure everything overlaps the proper way, and that is on the very bottom. Bolting on I with bolt B onto the side of the lower grate. The bracket's being mounted on the second hole down. So again, as you take a look here, you'll notice on that second hole, the lower one, and then oriented with the hole beneath and the bracket coming up over the top. And again on the inside, just noting the appropriate overlap. Bolt C is used for the middle of the pattern. As you can see, the single hole partway up the bottom. And so now you can see bolt C sticks through. You'll notice on all four sides. So very simple. And you can see in all four locations. And again, that's partway up on the side. This is going to be the holes for the legs. Pieces I and J fit together to make an integral piece. Now the legs, which are part B, you can see the bolts are already installed with the nuts. And these do have angles on the bottom, so you do need to be careful and orient them the proper way. Little pro tip for this build, a 10mm socket will go a long way for you.
So now, sitting all of these down and into place, you'll see, just fit down and right into place. And next, we'll assemble the outer ring.
You'll notice this side has a tab, and this side has a hole to receive it. It's fit together at a little bit of an angle. So just another little pro tip. Don't tighten everything down beyond what I'm going to call finger tight until you get the entire bottom assembled, including the outer ring. It's going to make it much easier to get everything to fit, so there's a little bit of room to move and wiggle as you try to get everything fit up. Otherwise, you might really struggle to get this ring on effectively. So everything just finger tight to keep all the pieces together. And now I'm going back around and tightening up all of my bolts, making sure everything's nice and snug now that I have this outer ring installed. Now for the bowl, pretty straightforward, just installing the handles. These already come with the nuts installed, and you'll notice that the handles simply dropping down and through the holes. Tightening up on the underside, very straightforward. So now, that sits right down and inside, sitting right on those bolts that we installed earlier. So very simple. You can see the grate. It's going to sit right down on there too. So that sits right on these brackets. Very nice. And now for what they're calling the connecting ring part E. So we're going to get this into place.
Now you'll notice this can only sit one way. If you look at the prior ring that we installed, there's 3 holes. 1, 2, 3. This is going to mate up with that exactly, and we're going to bolt this into place using the smallest screws A. So again, the one in the middle, and then you'll see these ones on the side. So these will mate up, and then on this side, these will mate up. So getting the bolts in here and bolting this ring into place.
So now for the top, and paying attention to the details, you'll notice 2 of these sections having sockets, smaller bolt A going through the top.
So now sections K and L, I've already taken bolt A, just put it through the top to kind of pin these into place, and you'll notice these are the ones with the sockets.
But the other 2 sections, sections M and N, do not have the sockets, and we're going to assemble these now. You can see here with sections M and N, getting the frame into place using bolts A, just to bolt up and through this pattern. You can see I just have 1 left to go, and then we set it onto the rest of the unit. Now you'll see here, as we pop all of this into place, this just sits right on that little socket there. It's just going to take a little bit to finagle that down and into place, but just lifting up on here a little bit. And the tolerances on this are a little bit tight, but it'll just take me a second here, and I'll get that into place.
And so the very last part of this, taking bolt C and installing it through, and you'll see now this hinges nicely. The ability to open and close this with ease. So you'll see that made a nice hinge here, and we, my friends, are done. And so the Ikuby globe style fire pit, all in all, pretty easy to put together. As you can see, it did take a number of steps, and just to remind you that all in all, this did take me roughly a little bit over an hour for full assembly, and again, keeping in mind that I was also filming. But this is not only about the assembly. This is about enjoying it, getting it out into the backyard and starting myself a fire. And if you're not familiar with starting fires or preparation of the wood, I have a ton of videos on this, and you can see here I am using one of my favorite fire starting techniques, building myself a little log cabin style here, getting some of my kindling and tinder into place. And you can see that I do use a little bit of, I would say, a survival technique, leveraging a knife and a ferro rod to actually spark the fire and get it started. But all in all, a number of different ways you could go about starting the fire. Now, one thing that I definitely like, I think the actual ability to stage the fire was very easy in this globe fire pit. It is round in the bottom, which would make you think it's difficult, but that's another reason why my particular fire lay style worked out very well. It ends up being a nice sturdy base, and I did give myself the ability to pretty much get a nice little nest, everything organized, plenty of airflow, and that definitely worked very well to get this fire started. And the Ikuby fire pit is definitely capable of holding a nice amount of wood. So again, depending on how big you want your fire to be, you can get this thing nice and full of a good amount of wood. Now, I could also see you using charcoal. If you're somebody that's going to be cooking in this, I think you could definitely get away with that as well. Maybe some sort of hickory, a number of different additives, or things that you're trying to actually use to flavor your food. Now, I do caution everybody to really do a good job and burn in this before you're going to cook in the first place. Burn off the factory oils, burn off some of the extraneous coatings and some of the things that they may have used in the manufacturing process. Now, this does come with a couple of accessories and things to help you along the way. For example, you end up with your cooking grate, which does sit on top, and it sits on the brackets that you have installed. And to get it off while it's hot, well, they also give you a nice little handled hook. Now, I did find that the hook worked fairly effectively. You need to be a little bit crafty in the way that you use it to make sure it doesn't slide on the grate, but at the same time, very effective. And you can actually use it to help you manage your fire a little bit as well. And here you can see getting the grate back in place, again, very effective. And so all in all, the Ikuby fire pit, extremely nice.
And so, all right, guys, there you have it, a look at the Ikuby fire pit, the full setup, all the details, and then putting this to good quality use. Now, there are a few things worth mentioning. First off, this is considered to be what they say FDA approved food grade. I have no way of knowing that. So for me personally, I don't necessarily trust that. I do feel like if you're going to use this, you have to fully season it. You need to burn everything off of this, get a good hot fire, and just put this to use before you're going to cook on it in the first place. I definitely enjoy the look. I think the look on this is fantastic. It works in a number of different scenarios, a number of different landscapes, and it actually fits my landscape style really nice. I do have a lot of stone, but I also have a lot of sort of oriental style bushes, and this is just clean enough, it's simple enough, and it doesn't really take away from any sort of one particular style, and I would say exactly the opposite. It kind of enhances it. Next, the ease of getting a fire started in this particular fire pit. It was very easy. I feel like it gets a good amount of airflow and can really sustain a nice hot fire. At no particular time was it choking out. At no particular time was it struggling to get enough air. So the amount of air volume that you get is absolutely wonderful. And beyond all of that, because it does have the screen, I do feel like it's generally very safe. The idea that embers might pop out of here, of course it could still happen, but having the full mesh and the full enclosure, I really feel safe about burning this in a number of locations. And especially if you are around a tighter area or someplace that may be a little bit sensitive. And so all in all, as I mentioned, not too difficult to set up, maybe just a little bit tricky, but not hard. It did kind of maybe make sense to have a couple of people, but I was also able to do it on my own. So if you had two people, a little bit easier. I tried to throw a couple of tips and tricks in there to sort of help things out, and I find that having the right tools for the job will definitely make a big difference. And so all in all, very nicely done. The 34-inch Ikuby Globe Fire Pit, really, really cool. And so again, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Ikuby for providing this for review. And for the rest of you, if you like this content, do me a favor, take a look at my Outer Limitless 2 channel, which is more on the tactical and firearm side of things. At this point, that channel is growing quickly. I have a ton of videos up there, so if you like what you see here on Outer Limitless, do me a favor and check me out on Outer Limitless 2. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.